Welcome everyone. This slideshow demonstrates the importance of recognizing project assumptions, provides you with examples of common project assumptions, and reinforces the relationship between project assumptions and project risks. Assumptions are statements or ideas considered to be true without evidence or proof, and nothing can derail a project quite as quickly or surprisingly as unrecognized or untested assumptions. It is a project manager's responsibility to review project goals and plans to make certain that major assumptions are explicitly documented and tested. For some, assumption recognition may be intuitive. For others, recognizing assumptions will require practice. However, even years of experience will not make challenging project assumptions with executives, sponsors, and team members any less awkward. Identifying, analyzing, and responding to assumptions may require confronting strongly and widely held organizational beliefs. Consider the replacement project manager assigned to salvage a product in the 5th year of a project originally scheduled to last 2 years. Although the majority of project work was being done by an outside vendor, coordination and cooperation with the internal project team was essential for project completion. The new project manager discovered a number of the usual causes of project failure: constantly changing requirements, poor sponsorship, and organizational resistance to the project. However, the most destructive problem discovered by the new project manager was a toxic relationship between the vendor team and the organizational team. Specifically, the organizational team was convinced that the vendor was deliberately withholding resources from the project. Hoping to force the vendor to add more people to the project, the leader of the organization's project team had recently escalated the conflict by submitting more change requests to the vendor and by withholding contract payments to the vendor. What assumption led to this toxic relationship? The toxic assumption is the vendor is capable of adding additional resources to the project. A search of public records reveals a small, poorly financed company whose major source of revenue was this particular contract. The vendor isn't refusing to perform, they simply can't perform, and requesting more changes and withholding payments is killing the project. Next, let's review how to recognize project assumptions and then discuss what to do about them. Assumptions are often hidden in what seems to be factual statements with an internal logic. Consider the following example. The bridge design specifies that the finished bridge will have 500 tons of fabricated structural steel. U.S. Steel sells unfabricated steel for $1,000 per ton. The cost of steel fabrication is $1,000 per ton. The budget for purchasing steel for the project should be $1 million. This figure is derived by multiplying 500 tons of steel by both the cost of the steel itself and the cost of fabrication. Take your time to think about assumptions that are contained in the bridge project statement. The more you know about engineering and bridges, the easier it will be to identify some of the assumptions. However, even if this project is outside of your field of expertise, there is a line of inquiry that any project manager should be able to follow. The validity of a $1 million budget for all project steel is dependent upon the truth of the following statements. No more or no less than 500 tons of structural steel will be used in the project. The price of steel for the project will be $1,000 per ton. The price of fabricating steel for the project will be an additional $1,000 per ton. The steel budget only includes the cost of steel and steel fabrication. Assumptions are statements that are considered true without proof. What events or facts compromise the truth of the 4 statements that support a budget of $1 million? Look at them one at a time. No more or no less than 500 tons of structural steel will be used in the project. To test this assumption, there are a number of questions that need to be asked. Have the design calculations been double-checked? What are the chances that the design will change before the project begins? What are the chances that the design will change after the project begins? Are there any other parts of the project that will require steel? Is there a one-to-one relationship between the steel required for the final bridge and the steel required to build the bridge? The price of project steel will be $1,000 per ton. The only way this statement can be true is if there is already a contract for the steel project that requires $1,000 per ton. Is there such a contract? If the answer is no, go back to the original statement and notice that the estimate was linked to the current price of U.S. steel. The validity of that estimate depends on the validity of U.S. steel prices and the availability of fixed price contracts, the availability of U.S. steel, the fitness of $1,000 per ton of steel for this project, and the availability of comparable steel by other manufacturers who will sell at the same price. The price of fabricating steel will be $1,000 per ton. Again, the only way this statement can be true is if there is already a fixed price contract with a particular fabricator for the required fabrication at $1,000 per ton. Otherwise, the cost of fabrication could go up or down based on a number of factors including the locale, the project schedule, and the fabrication of requirements. The budget only includes the cost of steel. The budget could be over-inclusive if, for instance, the actual or customary contract for steel fabrication included transportation of the steel to the construction site. You can see how even a simple budgetary decision might be based upon a number of assumptions, each of which requires validation. Here is another example of how the bridge project might be prone to untested planning assumptions. Construction for the bridge project is scheduled to begin in 10 months. Funds for the bridge are allocated as follows: 80% federal government, 20% city government. The bridge project is strongly supported by the current mayor. However, there is an election in 1 month's time and the new mayor will be in office for 9 months. All leading candidates for the mayor's office support the bridge project. Therefore, the bridge project will begin on schedule. The assumptions in this assessment include: a major candidate will win the election, the candidate who wins will not change his or her mind about the project, the mayor has the authority to delay or cancel the project, no other person or entity has enough power or authority to delay or cancel the project. A discussion with project stakeholders about these assumptions will undoubtedly reveal more ways in which local politics might delay or stop the project. For instance, while exploring the last assumption, you might discover that a local bicycle coalition has started a campaign to redesign the bridge to include bicycle lanes, and that although the leading candidate supports the bridge, she also supports a redesign for better bicycle and pedestrian access to the bridge. Such a redesign would delay the project. Hopefully, you are beginning to understand the importance of identifying project assumptions. Next, we will look at what to do once these assumptions have been identified. What actions need to be taken after project assumptions are identified? First, check the validity of the assumptions. For example, ask, is the price of steel stable? How volatile is the market for domestic steel likely to be when we are ready to purchase it for the bridge project? Second, if an assumption is proven true, no change is necessary. However, if the assumption can't be validated, identify risk associated with proceeding as though the assumption were true. If little risk is involved, changing the project plan is unnecessary. However, it might be a good idea to document the analysis in your risk plan. For example, it is unknown whether the next mayor will attempt to cancel or delay the bridge project. However, given community support for the project and lack of organized opposition to the bridge, the risk that the project will be canceled or delayed by the new mayor is highly unlikely. Third, if an assumption is proven false or an assumption cannot be validated and poses high risk, change the project plan. 4. Revise project plans in accordance to the level of risk associated with the false or unproved assumption. For example, the project manager learns that the price of steel is very volatile. However, the price is thought to be as likely to go down as it is to go up. Therefore, instead of purchasing steel for the bridge at the current price, a contingency fund is added to the project budget. If the cost of steel goes up, the steel can still be purchased with available resources. If the cost goes down, at least one project cost will be under budget. Of course, this action creates more assumption, including the potential increases in the cost of steel won't exceed the available contingency fund, and steel will be available for purchase when needed. By now, you will understand the importance of identifying project assumptions early in the project lifecycle. You also know that you should test the validity of the assumptions, identify risks associated with unproven assumptions, and adjust project plans to accommodate your discoveries. There are a number of routine assumptions that should be validated in every project. Use the following slides to develop your own assumptions checklist. As you gain experience with projects within your industry, tailor this checklist to your experience and needs. Effective project management depends upon effective executive and organizational support. An effective project sponsor is instrumental in achieving that support. Because of this importance of the sponsorship role, there are some unstated assumptions about project sponsors. They include 1. The sponsor will remain in that role for the duration of the project. 2. The sponsor has the authority, power, and influence required to allocated resources and political goodwill to the project. 3. The sponsor is accurately representing the project to key executives. Test your assumptions about the project sponsor by understanding him or her. Is she new to the company or near retirement? Is he in line for a promotion? Does she get along with other executives? Does he have the confidence of the CEO? Is she a consensus maker or a deal broker? Is he selling the project by promising too much? Is she likely to delegate project work to a subordinate? The answer to these questions will help you determine how effective your sponsor is likely to be so that you can plan accordingly. Because a project has been approved and funded, there are assumptions about project goals and objectives that are often made without validation. Of course, that can lead to problems. Here are some common assumptions about the goal and objectives of an approved and funded project. First assumption: this is the only project trying to achieve this organizational goal. Confirm that your project team is the only group trying to solve the problem or achieve the goal. In the process of planning or working on one project, it is not that unusual to discover that an entirely different department or facility has undertaken a similar project to solve the same problem your project is addressing. For example, your team is tasked with improving the speed and performance of all organizational databases. Your project will increase server and network speed and capacity. Another department has begun its own product to improve the performance of the databases they use by hosting them outside of the facility. Second assumption: projects with conflicting objectives will not be funded by the organization. Confirm that there is a consensus of purpose within your organization. It is not unusual to discover that another project is underway whose objectives may undermine or compromise achievement of your objectives. For example, your team is establishing a smoking lounge. However, another group is drafting new policies that will make the entire facility smoke-free. Third assumption: there won't be a shift in organizational goals or strategies before the project is completed. Confirm that the organizational mission and business strategies are likely to be the same at the beginning and end of long projects. It is particularly important to know if a project is closely associated with any politically or emotionally charged issues. For example, if you are on a team working on a governmental project that the next administration is likely to outsource. In the absence of a project management office that screens for these problems, it is the responsibility of the project manager to validate these three assumptions. When you plan a project, there are certain logistical and infrastructure assumptions that are often made. 1. You assume that the project team, customers, and other key stakeholders will stay put. You do not expect to show up for a meeting one day only to find out that the team has moved to another building. Physically moving stakeholders to another facility, building, floor, or even room can have significant effects on project schedules. In some cases, such moves can even cause major project redesigns or reworks. Secondly, similarly, you assume that the project team, customers, and other key stakeholders will use the same technology throughout the course of the project. After sending 12 weekly reports to the project sponsor, a vendor project managers did not expect to discover that the last 3 weekly reports, the ones done indicating scheduled delays, were not read because a sponsor changed her email address or were not read because she upgraded to a new version of software and hasn't installed the backward capability fix yet. At the project kickoff meeting, make certain that all key stakeholders understand the importance of communicating impeding technology or facility changes that could affect the project. Add this question to your assumptions checklist. Are there any facility and technology projects scheduled during the life of this project? There are 4 simple steps for managing project assumptions. 1. Recognize obvious assumptions. Even obvious assumptions may need to be challenged. 2. Uncover less obvious assumptions. Subject matter experts and skilled team members are available to help the project manager with this step. 3. Test all key assumptions. If any part of the success of the project is built upon the assumption, test it with whatever means are available. 4. Understand the risks associated with project assumptions and adjust the project plan. Thank you for taking the time to view this slideshow on project assumptions. And once again, this is businesstraining.com, where you can earn master's level qualifications to make more money.